And we're live.
And we're
hey,
live.
everybody.
We're live.
This is the Live at Epiphan show. I'm your host, George.
And I'm recovering from a cold. And that's the joke for the day.
That's right.
Some of you may, if the really wise people may have noticed in that pre-intro shot that things looked a little different.
Yeah, we got a new digs here.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
you
we're
can't
rocking
really
digs.
tell on this shot at the moment, but things are a little different around here. And we are actually sitting in the new studio space we've talked about a number of times, but we're still working on it, so it's not finished.
Yeah, but it's way nicer. We got a nice control room back there with glass, like your old school news office. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. We still got a lot of work to do. We will eventually do a whole thing on
How to build
building
this video.
it and
Yeah.
what we're doing here. So you have this great shot now. You can see us through the window and Cameron in the control booth there. So lots of cool things.
Yeah, let us know how it sounds.
Yeah.
George is monitoring the comments, so if you can't hear us, or if you can't see us, or if it looks great, let us know that too.
Exactly. So one of the things, of course, in a new studio is cabling.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, we're going back to
And-
the basics here, folks.
Yeah. So today we wanted to cover cabling, SDI versus HDMI versus
With a little bit of USB.
USB kind of ish.
And some future stuff.
Yeah. So we wanted to talk about that, pros, cons, and all the other different.
Yeah, because
pieces.
sometimes we know you're trying to buy a piece of equipment and it comes with HDMI and SDI on it, and you need to understand when do I need which for what, right?
Yeah.
So we're going to cover some of the technical stuff, and we'll tell you some advantages about it you don't even know about, and some of this big time limitations that we know all about.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But before we jump into that, I wanted to share with everyone this beautiful piece of artwork right here.
Yes.
What do we? Is this EVoltion?
No, just Evolution. This is our magazine we put out. It's called Evolution, and you can download it on our website. And it's full of content. Oh, frame it up there, George.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
Full of content all about
good.
audio, video stuff, and
some of the
transcription,
titles
and some future-looking stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway, all these great articles. You can download it. It's free.
We do have printed copies. For those of you who were lucky enough to attend ISE in Amsterdam last week, you had the chance to take one of these home, and hopefully many of you did.
And if you come visit us at any of our shows, we'll have this there
these.
for you. So
But
come and see us.
as George was saying, you can get a digital copy. This probably won't work, but there is even a QR code on the front, but there is a whole
So people are scanning it.
epiphan.com/mag.
Yes,
Does that work?
that's right.
Does it actually work?
Epiphan.com/mag. It totally does, George. Yeah.
But there's a lot of great articles in here, as we were saying. This is not like some little tiny insert. This is like a real legit magazine.
No, it's great.
There's a great
People
piece
have
in the
been-
back. Anyway,
Yeah.
put that aside.
Yeah.
So check it out, epiphan.com/mag, M-A-G, and check out your digital copy.
Yeah.
of EVoltion.
So let's jump into the show. George is going.
Yeah.
This is a show about props today because we're talking
It is.
cables, and the first ones we want to talk about are probably the most ubiquitous cables that we know about,
Yeah.
which is HDMI.
Yeah, so
And this is going to be a real love-hate story that we're going to go through because we use HDMI everywhere. It's on the back of all of our products.
yeah,
And
the downside is how many there are, right? And how messy things can get.
So by many, you mean how many different types, right?
Exactly. So I only grabbed 2 samples, but it actually provides me all 3 because of the type they are.
Okay.
But HDMI, the good part is that it's pretty universal, right? You're going to see it everywhere now. Cameras, laptops, Blu-ray players, if people even still use those, televisions.
Yes. There's no complexity to it. You plug it in, it always works
Exactly.
when it works, but you never have to configure it or fuss around with it. at all.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a digital standard, generally very plug and play,
Yeah.
uses things called EDIDs to auto-negotiate everything.
Yeah.
So it makes things very easy. And of course, it's everywhere. The drawbacks, of course, are something,
Well, let's show them the 3 types here so
Yeah,
they understand
so-
the 3 sizes, because this is...
I have 2 different cables here. One is a full-size to mini HDMI. Then I also have a full-size to micro cable here as well.
So it's basically the 3 sizes of the connectors. If
Exactly.
You,
These
Cameron, if you
3.
pull up my screen here, I'll show you in greater detail
Yeah.
what that looks like. They're basically just small, medium, and large. And they all do exactly the same thing. So you don't even need to consider it. You just need to know your gear might have one size or the other, and you can get an adapter to make it full size, which is what we do all over the place.
Right. The plus is that, I guess the drawback is that you may need adapters or cables like these ones.
Yeah.
The plus is that you can use passive adapters between any of these because they are just physical sizes.
Yes.
The signaling is the same.
Yeah.
I would say the drawback to that is, in some gear, for example, I'm not a particular fan of the middle size. I personally cannot stand the mini connector because I find durability on this connector to be really, really poor.
Yeah, durability on all of them is an issue.
It's large enough to use a heavy enough cable that can torque things.
Yeah.
But it's not solid enough to alleviate its own torque like a full-size connector is.
Sure.
Whereas a micro is small enough to basically just be totally fine.
That's funny, eh?
But this maybe breaks more with repeated use, inserting and things like that.
So one of the other limitations is that you cannot lock a HDMI cable in place, like you could with your DVI cable or your SDI cable or many other.
Exactly. So HDMI in a lot of ways replaced DVI.
Yeah.
This video signaling is the same.
Yeah.
And as we've covered in very early episodes in the back catalog, audio is possible over both. But DVI, for those who remember, have 2 screw terminals to.
Yeah.
It's not going anywhere.
But there are those locking aftermarket HDMI cables,
but
which
it's not
we have.
a spec.
It's not a spec, and we have some floating around the office here.
Yeah.
And at first they seem great because you plug them in and they work. But my colleague Yusufa will tell you the time I jammed one into his laptop in a meeting and said, hey, check out this locking HDMI cable. That was in there for about a week because we could not get it out because it was all just based on tension and pins that were supposed to just magically work. So
there's some that use a little button on the boot that have some pins, which is kind of a rip-off of what DisplayPort uses, which we're not talking about DisplayPort much today, but DisplayPort has that as a spec for the full-size connector. But HDMI doesn't. A company called Geffen, who makes a lot of splitters and video routing and stuff, they used a single screw terminal on some of their gear.
Yeah, and
to
sometimes
invent their own standard.
like our Z-Cam, which we're using here today, you can put a little lock in it just to hold it in place, just a little scissor lock on it, and that kind of work around.
So
but it's gimmicky.
Yeah, I would say probably number one drawback of HDMI, especially when we're talking about the context of some of the things like this new studio, maybe not so much, but maybe a larger venue. Maybe we're doing live event production.
Yes.
Is length. A standard copper HDMI cable like this in a similar gauge is good for about 20 feet.
So if your event is in a 20-foot room,
you're great.
Golden.
You maybe push to 25. If you get a really, really, really heavy gauge one with extra insulation and filters.
But it's like a rope. It's not a nice cable.
It's
we have them here.
Yeah, they're massive.
So it's like a 2-person job to wind those things
you might
out.
stretch it out to 75 feet.
Yeah.
Maybe 50 feet to be safe.
Yeah.
But if you're talking about a big venue, that's not taking you anywhere.
No.
And if you're having to drag around, like that 50-foot heavy gauge one we have, that thing weighs like 10 pounds.
Yeah.
If you had to drag that around off the back of your camera with no locking connector, that's a bad day.
They do make those fiber ones.
They do, and we talked about that in a previous episode.
Yeah, and you can get extenders. So there's a few sort of workarounds to make HDMI world longer, but they're not as good as we're going to find out about SDI. But there's another thing that we need to talk about, which is the HDMI. What is it called? The version or the protocol?
That's the other thing is there are versions of HDMI, and the versions also, if you have to be worried about it, is what it supports. Yeah. So this is a quick breakdown. We won't linger on this too long, but you can see there's a bandwidth difference between the different versions, which basically can put a cap on how much. What resolution or what other extra data you can put through. So if you look at this very quickly, 1.3 you don't really see anymore today. That's pretty much gone. 1.4 is pretty much the standard, but there's some sub-variants to that. It will allow you to do up to 4K at 30 hertz. So really about 30 frames per second, max. Doesn't support HDR if you're into that, which is not that big of a thing for production, but it will be someday. And it's okay. 2.0 is becoming the standard. That's what you really need to do 4K 60.
So if I go buy one tomorrow at Best Buy, it's going to be 2.0 probably?
Luckily, the cables actually don't matter that much. It's your receiver and your sender that really matter. So if your camera does 4K 60 and has an HDMI 2.0 port, but you're connecting it to a capture device or an encoder that is only HDMI 1.4, you're not going to get 4K 60.
So it's not a spec of the cable at all. It's just a spec of
I mean, they say it is, and to a degree that could happen, but generally it's not really a big issue.
There's one other thing we wanted to show you is how they're kind of prone to breaking. And if you see in this diagram here, there's, what did we say, like 19?
There are 19 pins.
pins and 19 cables running down the length of that cable. So if any one of those breaks, your whole thing is completely borked. So,
exactly. So not
that
only
happens to us. Like we could fill a Volkswagen Beetle with the amount of cables that we have that are broken around here.
I mean, and not only is, I'm not a fan of the mini connector, as I said, but if you kink one of these or twist it or whatever, and one of those 19 wires happens to short or bend or break, the whole cable's garbage and you throw it out. So pros, super universal. It's everywhere, everywhere, and very common, very cheap usually, very inexpensive. So that's a pro. Downside is durability, limited length, without cost, and no lock.
So then we move on to SDI cabling. Now, George is going to pull one up here, and some of you might not have seen very much SDI, and that's because you typically see it mostly with pro gear.
Right.
So if you're just in the land of consumer cameras and computers and televisions and stuff, you don't see SDI. But as soon as you go into pro cameras, you see SDI, either SDI and HDMI or SDI or HDMI. Sometimes you have to choose. You get that choice.
Upsides, locking connector.
Upside is everything, man.
Extremely durable locking connector. It basically essentially only has one wire, the core. So durability-wise, you can twist these a little more. You're not going to worry about breaking a small piece. You have a much thicker piece of copper. They are less flexible. They're stiffer. But a locking BNC connector is extremely durable and is locking, of course.
So just to clarify, there are other cables that use this kind of connector.
Yes, that's in the cons category.
Well, it's just something to be aware of, right? Not everything that looks like this is this.
No, exactly. So the locking BNC connector, maybe if we can go to the overhead shot, Cameron, we'll take a little bit of another look at this. Let's see if I can frame that up. The locking BNC connector, for those old school people, have probably seen this around literally forever. And that's because this literal same physical connector has been used for industrial composite video. And industrial component video.
Because they made a good cable and they're like, let's use this for all this cool stuff.
And SDI uses it. It is dimensionally the same. It is the same lock. But the actual data traveling through this wire is completely different. SDI is a digital signal. Those old school ones are analog. They do not do the same job. And so you can't just take something that receives SDI and plug in something that's composite. So you have to know what you're dealing with. On the plus side, the reason it was so popular with that old stuff was because you can run this cable forever. Like, think about how far...
You see this cable as infrastructure within buildings.
Exactly.
Like in a church or a government place, they'll have this running all around the place.
This cable is not all that different and near identical to the same thing that brings in your cable television into your house. It's coax cable. So that's a big advantage. It means you can buy SDI cable or just coax cable in bulk, cheap. You can crimp it yourself if you have the tools. And because you're not worried about 19 pins, that's a reasonable thing to do. So if you need to wire a building or if you need to run 300 feet, SDI is the way to go without question.
So we have products that are HDMI only and we have products that are SDI only, but it's really great when you offer both. So do you have a Pearl around here?
I don't.
Oh, okay. I thought you did.
No, they're all in the control room.
Well, our Pearl systems all have HDMI and SDI on them, so it gives you the option that way.
But even with our capture cards, we have different versions because, again, although HDMI and SDI are both digital signals, they are different digital signls.
So you can't just throw a converter on and
no, they're not. They can't be passively adapted. You would have to use some sort of...
There are converters and stuff, but they're
full scan.
I'm dreaming of a Pearl Mini.
Oh, look at that. You need a full scalar scan converter to go from digital to digital or analog to digital. So you can convert, but not. But again, the nice part is, right, you get that solid locking connector that is not going to come off.
Here,
like that's
dangle it, George. Come on.
You could,
There you go.
Yeah, that's a few $1,000s in the air.
Not recommended.
Don't do this at home, folks.
But there's also different specs of SDI. So I have another graphic here to show you. When you're buying SDI equipment, you may see something like, commonly you might see 3G or 12G or 6G. You will not see 24G.
Not yet.
That's
not yet.
The new one.
Soon.
That's the 8K of of SDI, and that's exactly what it's for. So over each of these, you can carry different amounts of data.
These days, you'll see HD, 3G, and 12G most commonly, 6G occasionally. SD, if you see that, you're living in, as it suggests, standard definition world. Just throw it out.
Yeah, throw it out. So that moves us on to our last choice, which we might see more of. I mean, we're talking about USB cables for video. Right now, you see it a lot on the consumer side. So you see all kinds of consumer products that, like webcams, and usually kind of small rinky-dink equipment that does USB. But it's actually quite a capable way to transfer data.
Yes.
Right? You can send 1080p data over USB 3.0.
Yes, it has been used in a ton of different ways. Similar to the HDMI limitation, there are versions, like you said, 3.0, there's 3.2, there's 2.0, there's 1.0, 1.1, like going way, way back.
But right now we're talking about standard is 3.0, and we've got USB-C.
Well, then you also have the physical connector types.
Yes.
A, B, and C are the most common, but there's also micro and mini, which are starting to die out now.
Yes, right.
This cable is a full-size A, USB-A type to a USB-C. You're going to see this with pretty much any new Android phone, tablet.
Yes,
You're going to see it on your new MacBook Pro, USB-C anyways. The advantage here is that it is a digital data transfer again of a totally different type of SDI and HDMI again.
Yes, yes.
But this can do a ton of stuff. Like you said, webcams.
It can, but that's the beauty of it, but it's also one of the challenges of it because it's not because it's a general data transfer. Sometimes it goes wacky and it's like, no, send this over my USB, don't send this. So sometimes you have to tell it what to do. Exactly.
But most importantly, unlike, say, HDMI, where you're really dealing with almost a peer-to-peer relationship.
Yes.
USB really isn't. It's more of typically a host and a peripheral.
Right. Okay.
Right. And that peripheral has a dedicated job, and that's all it does. Yes. So for example, although cables exist to accomplish this, it can't be done with just anything. I couldn't just take this cable and plug it into your MacBook and then plug it into my laptop and expect anything to work.
Well, yours is a PC. It's just, nothing works on that.
That's just not how USB works.
No, that's right. That's right.
There are cables that have its own little switch box gear in there that mount itself as double storage, but those are stupid.
So what I wonder about with USB is, could we see a future where we don't have, where everything is USB-C?
Yes, but...
Or not USB-C, just let's just say USB, because USB-C might be today's technology. And
there might be a different connector
USB
down the road.
XR.
I think USB-C is going to be the de facto standard for a physical connector for quite some time, especially considering the European Union is working on passing a law to force mobile phone manufacturers to standardize on it.
Yes, the socialist approach to hardware development.
I don't think it's a terrible idea, actually.
No, I don't either. I really like it, and I'm like a big Apple guy, too.
Yeah, but the biggest thing with USB-C in particular, in the oddity way, is that we see it as a physical connector, but different implementations use it for different data. So the MacBook Pros, the new ones, you see the physical USB-C connector. They're actually using that same physical connector for a bunch of different signals. Because under the hood, they have a bunch of different chips doing different jobs. So it's being used for power to charge the thing. It's being used for Thunderbolt, which is totally different signaling again. Which Thunderbolt can also provide DisplayPort, which is similar to HDMI.
Sure.
And it can also provide HDMI.
So it's super general.
Right, but it all really depends on what's under the hood. They just are funneling all of that through one connector and have the logic to switch modes.
Yes.
So I think that's where we'll see USB-C. We'll start seeing cameras using it because of its physical size. Durability is good, it's reversible.
And you can do power?
It can carry a lot of power. So you might start seeing it used for HDMI on smaller cameras. Like GoPros already use it.
But you're not going to see it on your Blackmagic big
probably
locking camera?
No, because at the end of the day, for a big professional setup, you want that SDI lock-in connector.
So last one, we did an episode on USB buses not too long ago. Well, it was a while ago, but we have one more, which is not really a connector, but when we're talking about the future, what the future might hold for all of these cables, it may be that we use none of them, and in fact, we just use networking.
Right.
So it
So
could
let's
be
just throw all that away.
throw all these cables away, and we just do everything AV over IP.
Yes.
You can see a blog about that on our website, where we talk about how AV over IP is becoming bigger and bigger. When we go to these trade shows like
different
ISE,
ways.
it's
HD-based T, NDI, all these other protocols.
Yeah, so that industry is exploding right now. So this could be a very historical.
Well, what does networking give us? It gives us a cable that can run a heck of a long way.
Yeah.
A locking connector.
Yeah.
Physically small.
Dirt cheap.
Durable. Very cheap.
Yeah.
So
and completely universal.
We'll see. Yeah, exactly.
And that's assuming there's a cable.
Right.
With
Wi-Fi.
Wi-Fi and 5G, George. Come on.
5G. Sure.
Yeah.
With Wi-Fi 6, 5G, as bandwidths of these wireless technologies increase, they become more viable for video.
Yes.
So
we've done a show on 5G as well. We've done shows on a lot of this stuff. So make sure check out our YouTube channel and subscribe.
Of course. Like, subscribe, follow, do all those things.
We'll have all these videos and more there. And we're here every Thursday at 3 o'clock. Yeah. We're here next week. Do you remember what the show is next week?
Off the top of my head, not really, because I wasn't paying attention to that meeting this morning.
Tune in next week to find out what next week's show is about.
If you have questions or comments, of course, about any of these cable types, ask Wikipedia. No, I'm joking. You can leave it in the comments, and we will try to address you. But I'm not joking. Wikipedia literally has all of this information right there with charts that will make your head spin.
So make sure to tune in to Wikipedia. Great promo. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you in a week.
Thanks.
Bye.